My favorite quote is from David Foster Wallace. He said, "You'll stop worrying so much what other people think of you when you realize how seldom they do."
Is that if you care too much what other people think, it's probably because you don't have something more important to care about. Think about it. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's pretend a baby is trapped in a burning building and you're the only person that knows that that baby is there. Now all these people are standing around and you're like, oh my God, I gotta go save that baby. And you start running into the building and all these people you know are like, man, what's Mark doing? That's fucking crazy. Wow, you're an idiot, Mark. Who runs into a burning building? They start talking all this shit. Would that stop you from going into that building? No, you don't fucking care what people on the street think. There's a fucking kid who's about to die. You go save that fucking life. And when you come out, you also don't care what they think. You either did it or you didn't. You know, if you come out and they're all like, oh my God, Mark, you're such a great guy, woohoo. You know, it's like what matters is the kid's life. Beyond the social validation, beyond the embarrassment, the approval, people agreeing or disagreeing with you, saving somebody's life is what matters in that moment. Now that's an extreme example, but the same principle plays out throughout life. You will stop caring what other people think about you when you have something more important to care about. When you have something worth being embarrassed over. When you have something worth being ridiculed for. When you believe in something so intensely that it's so important that if you're willing to lose friends or the respect of your neighbors, that's when you stop caring what other people think. And the irony of this, of course, is that that is the moment that everybody starts respecting you.
The feeling brain, so the thinking brain thinks in terms of like logic, cause and effect, correlations, things like that. The feeling brain thinks in terms of importance. It thinks in terms of values. Some things are very valuable and worthy of being pursued, and other things are very, very not valuable and they should be avoided. And the feeling brain kind of designates, you know, almost a value score for everything, every experience, every potential experience that we can consider, including ourselves. So our idea of what our self is just another idea. The same way when people have a low valuation of themselves, when their feeling brain thinks that their identity is not valuable and have negative emotions about it, we call that low self-esteem. And when the idea of ourself, our feeling brain has a high valuation of it and has positive feelings for it, we call that high self-esteem. And so a lot of like therapeutic work for many decades was kind of almost obsessed of like just trying to get people's this relationship between your feeling brain and your conception of your identity to get the needle to move from negative to positive. But ultimately, your concept of yourself is built out of the narratives that we create out of our experience. So all of the experiences that I've had, or all the experiences that you have, vast collection of narratives that you've constructed around your own experiences. And it's layer on top of layer on top of layer on top of layer. And your feeling brain has a certain, valence for those experiences. And so if you want to change how you feel about yourself, you have to start peeling back those layers of narrative and start getting down into the deepest, earliest ones, because those are often the most impactful and influential. Self-worth equals the sum of our emotions over time. So you might even say like identity equals our emotions over time. So something traumatic happens in your childhood. That pain early on in your life causes a lot of negative emotions. And one of the things that I talk about is that anytime we feel an emotion, it compels us to do what I call equalizing, which is like if I'm angry at you, I'm going to continue to be angry at you till I either retaliate or you apologize. Like something needs to happen to make that anger go away. There needs to be some sort of like equalization between us. And if there is no equalization, that anger just kind of simmers and sits there forever. And one of the reasons why childhood traumas are so debilitating for people is that essentially these extremely painful experiences occur to our feeling brains while our thinking brains are still undeveloped and don't know how to explain or create meaning around that pain. So let's say something really painful happened to me now, I'd be like, oh, well, he meant well and, shit happens or whatever. But if I'm like a 5-year-old, my explanation for it only gets as far as like, I'm a bad boy, I'm a bad person, and the world hates me. Like and that will stick because it doesn't get equalized, and it'll stick for the rest of my life. And the problem is that we forget that painful thing happened. So we just kind of go through life with this feeling of inferiority and pain that lingers that we can't really put an explanation to or explain away. And so the process of basically unraveling a lot of our experiences until we get back to that original experience. And with our adult thinking brain, we can now put meaning to that pain that is helpful to us. So everybody kind of has their own that will resonate with them more. I think the first step is to just decide that you don't actually know who you are. It's an arbitrary construct that you've spun up over the course of your life. It's a subjective idea, and it can be anything you want. But also understand that you don't, like you said, you never know for certain who you actually are. You don't actually know what's true. You don't know if you're a good person or a bad person. You don't know if you're a musician or an author. I could label myself anything. So I think when we start to realize that, how kind of lose that certainty about who we are, or what we think we know about ourselves, that kind of like, it starts to loosen the glue of that ball of yarn of stories that we've told ourselves. And once that glue is loosened, you can more easily pull threads out and start to see like, oh, it's probably not the most helpful narrative that I could create for myself. So I guess that would be the second step. First step, lose the certainty. Second step is to actually like pull on some of these threads and then question, what if that wasn't true? If you're not improving yourself for the right reasons, you could be damaging yourself. The why behind everything you try to improve, or everything that you're driven towards, is more important than actually how far you get. So for me, I see a very direct connection between self-improvement and ethics. I think if you dig deep enough into these questions of what growth means or what improvement means, you inevitably run into what is better, period. What is better or worse, period. What makes a better life? What makes humanity better? And so it's my goal has always been, I never want to be that guy on stage who's like, this is what you should do, this is how you do it, here's my 5-step method, blah, blah, blah. I want to be the guy who doesn't, I don't want to give answers, I want to give better questions. I want to help people sort through these questions in themselves, because ultimately these questions around values are so personal. There's no way for me to answer any individual without inserting my values onto them. And when you do that, you rob them of the ability to choose what matters for themselves, choose their own meaning in their life.